They weren't just murdered, they were silenced. That's how the anonymous 911 caller described it to dispatch. Calm, cold, almost rehearsed. Two lifeless bodies. A Hollywood estate worth $13.5 million. Blood on the marble floor, and more questions than answers. Rob Reiner, 78, the beloved director of When Harry Met Sally and The Princess Bride, was found stabbed to death alongside his wife, famed photographer Michelle Singer Reiner, 70. And now, the industry that once celebrated their decades-long love story is trying to understand how it all unraveled in a single night. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. But what if the real story didn't begin with the bloodshed? What if it began decades earlier, behind the smile of a young girl named Tracy? Because the person now pulling back the velvet curtain on the Reiner family's happy legacy isn't a stranger. It's Tracy Reiner, Rob's own daughter. And she has something to say? The lie of the Hollywood family. You know the story. You've seen it before. A famous Hollywood couple. A string of hit movies. Beautiful children, red carpet appearances, charity galas, talk show interviews. The perfect family. But behind every perfect image is a pressure cooker. Behind every smiling press photo is a secret no one wants leaked. And when Tracy Reiner finally broke her silence, it wasn't for attention. It was because the truth had been hiding in plain sight for too long, and the bodies in Brentwood proved it was too late to pretend anymore. What she revealed stunned everyone, friends, fans, journalists, even the LAPD. Because Tracy wasn't just talking about grief. She was exposing a system, a legacy, and a father she says the world never really knew. We lied about how happy our family really was. These words weren't spoken on a podcast or typed in a social media post. They were said live. National television. CNN primetime interview. The whole world watching. And Tracy's eyes? They didn't blink. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just spoke. Deliberate. Unflinching. Unapologetic. I want people to understand, she said. We didn't just lose two people we loved. We lost the story we'd been telling for 40 years. And it was never true to begin with. Let that sink in. Because when the adopted daughter of one of Hollywood's most respected icons tells the world their perfect family was built on lies, control, and secrets, you don't just listen. You brace yourself. And it gets darker. The shocking scene that started it all. Sunday morning, 7:13 a.m. A 911 call. Two people down. Not breathing. I think they're dead. The voice? Romy Reiner, Rob and Michelle's youngest daughter, just 27 years old. She'd stopped by the estate early that morning. Reports claim she was supposed to meet her mother for breakfast. Instead, she walked into a blood-soaked nightmare. Police arrived at the Brentwood estate to find both Rob and Michelle dead in the living room. Multiple stab wounds. No forced entry. No sign of valuables missing. And in the guest house at the back of the property, their son Nick Reiner, 32. Calm. Quiet. He was arrested at the scene. Charged that very night with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Now pause. Because this is where most stories end. A grisly double homicide. A family torn apart. A son behind bars. But this story? It's only just beginning. A family full of shadows. The Reiner family wasn't like other Hollywood dynasties. At first glance, they appeared tight-knit. Rob and Michelle raised 3 children. Tracy, Nick, and Romy, each with unique paths. Tracy, the eldest, often mentioned in interviews how much she admired her father. Nick, the wild card, struggled publicly with addiction but seemed to be finding his way. And Romy, the youngest, stayed mostly out of the spotlight until now. But for years, whispers followed the Reiners. Whispers about control, favoritism, secrets buried under decades of crafted PR. When Rob adopted Tracy during his first marriage to Penny Marshall, Hollywood praised him as the modern father. But Tracy's later revelations would suggest something much more complicated and much darker. There were rumors that Rob never truly accepted her, that behind closed doors, things were cold, that she was seen more as a trophy, proof that he could play dad, than a daughter he truly loved. And yet, Tracy remained silent. For years. Until now. Tracy Reiner, the silent witness. She didn't speak to reporters the day of the murder. She didn't appear at the vigil. She didn't post tributes online. She vanished. For 7 days, No one knew where she was. Not even Romy. Then on the 8th day, Tracy walked into CNN headquarters. No entourage, no lawyer, just her, and a leather-bound journal. She handed it to the producers, Rob Reiner's personal diary, and said 7 words that would set the media on fire. I think it's time people knew everything. But what was in the journal? The answer wasn't simple, because this wasn't a screenplay. It wasn't organized or edited or cleaned up for the press. It was raw, private, messy. It spoke of family tension, regret, fear, mentions of Nick, he's slipping again, mentions of Tracy, she wants distance. I don't blame her. And most disturbingly, a note scribbled 3 days before the murder. Something is coming. I can feel it. Was it paranoia? Was it prophecy? Or was it Rob's last attempt to confess before someone silenced him forever? The perfect facade begins to crumble. As investigators combed through the Reiner estate, more pieces surfaced. Michelle's handwritten notes, hidden in a jewelry box. Surveillance footage showing someone entering the house late at night. A burner phone in Rob's office drawer. Deleted voicemails. And yet, none of it painted a clear picture. Only Tracy's voice did. And when she spoke, she didn't just talk about the night her parents died. She went back. To childhood. To awkward birthdays. To slamming doors and cold dinners. To therapy sessions where she cried that Dad doesn't look at me the way he looks at Nick. She talked about secrets. Not just between her and Rob, but between all of them. She said, I think we all made a deal with silence. And that silence cost 2 people their lives. Why this story matters now? Because this isn't just a Hollywood tragedy. It's not just another courtroom drama. This is a story about legacy. About the masks we wear. The lies we inherit. It's about what happens when a family values image more than intimacy, and how that can shatter everyone inside it. Tracy Reiner's confession isn't just about her father's sins. It's about everyone's complicity. And now, she's naming names. In the interviews that followed her CNN sit-down, Tracy hinted at more. A second suspect. A secret room in the house. A handwritten will, altered just weeks before the murders. And a voicemail Michelle left the night before she died. One that the police still won't release. Why? What are they hiding? And who really killed Rob and Michelle Reiner? Because what comes next changes everything. In the chapters ahead, we're diving deep. Into Tracy's upbringing. Into Nick's addictions. Into Romy's cryptic warning to police. He wasn't alone. We'll explore the hidden pages of Rob's diary. The will that shocked the entire family. And the strange visitor spotted near the estate 3 nights before the murders. You'll hear from former staff, family friends, therapists, and even those who say, Rob Reiner was not who we thought he was. So buckle up, because the truth isn't just complicated. It's dangerous. And Tracy? She's not done talking yet. They weren't supposed to die like that. That's what one close family friend whispered to a TMZ reporter just hours after the news broke. Because when Rob and Michelle Reiner were found stabbed to death inside their Brentwood mansion, it didn't feel like a random act of violence. It felt intentional, precise, personal. And the more details leaked, the harder it became to believe this was just another Hollywood tragedy. So let's rewind. Let's step back into the quiet, sun-drenched neighborhood of Brentwood, California. Before the flashing lights, before the headlines, before the sirens screamed through the hills, and the Reiner name took on a whole new meaning. Because what really happened that Sunday morning? And why is everyone, even the LAPD, terrified to tell the full story? 7:13 a.m., the call that changed everything. The 911 dispatcher barely finished her coffee. It was a calm morning. Clear skies. No major incidents. Then the call came through. Female voice. Young. Breathless. There's blood. I think they're dead. It was Romy Reiner. Just 27. A quiet figure in a very loud family. Not an actress. Not a filmmaker. Not a red carpet regular. Just a daughter who showed up for Sunday breakfast and instead walked into hell. According to reports, she entered through the side door, like she always did. She was early. Her mother had texted the night before. Let's have breakfast. Just us girls. But when Romy arrived, something felt off. No music. No coffee brewing. No movement. Then she saw them. Rob and Michelle. Side by side. On the floor of the living room. Faces pale. Eyes wide open. And blood. So much blood. She ran out. Called 911. Then collapsed on the front lawn, sobbing. Within minutes, sirens filled the canyon. But what they would find inside would raise more questions than answers. The scene, too clean to be random. Police entered cautiously. This wasn't a home invasion. There were no signs of forced entry. Nothing stolen. No shattered glass. No kicked-in doors. The Reiner estate was immaculate. Still, silent, cold. The victims, Rob and Michelle, were found exactly where Romy described. Rob's body was angled slightly toward his wife, as if he'd been trying to shield her. Michelle's hand was outstretched, her fingertips smeared in red, as if she'd tried to write something. Both had been stabbed multiple times. Medical examiners would later confirm the wounds were deliberate, not frenzied. No overkill. No chaos. Just precision. And in a case like this, that meant one thing. Whoever did it knew them. 8:02 a.m. The guest house discovery. Behind the main house sits a separate guest house. Modern. Minimalist. Just enough space for a single adult. That's where police found Nick Reiner. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He opened the door before they even knocked. Shirtless. Calm. Expressionless. "Are my parents dead?" he asked. When officers confirmed the worst, Nick simply nodded. "I figured." Let that sink in. Not a scream. Not a tear. Just acceptance. He told police he'd been asleep. Didn't hear anything. Claimed he was up late gaming. Had headphones on. His alibi? A Twitch stream that conveniently glitched just before 3 a.m. Detectives noted something odd. His hands were clean. Too clean. No trace of blood. No cuts. No scratches. And yet, one knife was missing from the kitchen block. And a second knife, found discarded in the backyard, had no fingerprints. None. Not even the victims. Whoever handled that weapon wiped it clean. Professional? Or planned? The media swarms. But Tracy stays silent. By noon, helicopters circled overhead. News vans lined the street. Neighbors were interviewed. Fans posted tributes. Hollywood legend murdered in his home. Rob Reiner, dead at 78, stabbed in brutal family slaying. The headlines spread like wildfire. But amidst the chaos, one voice was missing. Tracy Reiner, the eldest daughter, the industry insider, the one with every reason to speak. She didn't release a statement, didn't post on Instagram, didn't even show up to the candlelight vigil outside the gate. In fact, she vanished. Completely. No one could reach her, not friends, not family. And some began to wonder, was she grieving privately? Or was she hiding something? A family fractured behind closed doors. It's no secret that every Hollywood family comes with baggage. But the Reiners? They made it look easy. Photos showed a loving unit, arms around each other, smiling at premieres, supporting each other's projects. But insiders tell a different story. One former housekeeper, who requested anonymity, told a reporter. They weren't close. Not really. Not when the cameras weren't around. She described Rob as controlling, Michelle as fragile, Nick as volatile. And Tracy? Tracy always felt like an outsider, like she wasn't allowed in the inner circle. Another friend, a former agent, said, Rob adored Nick. He was the golden boy, no matter how much trouble he caused. Tracy, she was tolerated. So when the news broke that Nick had been arrested, it didn't shock everyone. Some even whispered. It was only a matter of time. The timing, too perfect to ignore. Let's pause for a second. The night before the murders, Rob canceled a meeting with his lawyer. Michelle reportedly called her sister in a panic, saying, "He's scaring me again." Security footage caught movement near the pool at 2:47 a.m. And a single, unsent text was found on Rob's phone draft. "If something happens to me, tell Tracy to check the study." But by the time police got access to that phone, the study had already been cleared out. No laptop, no journals, just one overturned chair and a single scrap of paper with the words, "I know." Nick's arrest, and the questions begin. By 3:30 p.m. Sunday, Nick Reiner had been formally arrested and charged with the double murder of his parents. The public was stunned, but for those who knew the Reiners, it was déjà vu. Nick had struggled for years, addiction, arrests, rehab stints, violent outbursts. And Rob had always protected him, paid for lawyers, swept stories under the rug, funded rehab, again and again. But this time, no more cover-ups. Nick was booked without bail. And Tracy? Still silent. Until she wasn't. And then came the Journal. 8 days later. CNN. Primetime. Tracy walks in. No entourage. Just a small black book in her hand. Rob Reiner's journal. She flips it open, shows the producers, and calmly says, "He knew he was going to die." Inside were pages of handwritten notes. About family tension. About paranoia. About unfinished business. One entry read, "Tracy's right. I made mistakes. But Nick, he's changing. I don't know if I can stop it." Another, "Michelle's scared. She says she hears someone outside at night. I told her it's nothing. But what if it's not?" And the final entry? Just one line. "I think this ends soon." But what Tracy said next changed everything. She looked straight into the camera. No tears. No scripts. And she said, "We lied. We lied about how happy we were. We lied to protect someone. But now 2 people are dead, and silence isn't protection anymore. It's betrayal." The world froze. Hollywood froze. And the LAPD? They opened a second investigation. This time, not just into Nick Reiner, but into the entire family. Because Tracy wasn't just talking about her brother. She was hinting at something much bigger. A cover-up. A second suspect. A truth so dark, it could destroy everything the Reiner name stood for. What was Tracy protecting? And why speak now? Because the murders weren't random. They weren't impulsive. They were, as one detective allegedly put it, ritualistic. The positioning of the bodies. The missing knife. The wiped fingerprints. The silent guest house. And Tracy? She'd been carrying the truth for years. Maybe too afraid to say it. Maybe waiting for the right moment. Or maybe she knew this was coming all along. And Rob's final request, "Tell Tracy to check the study," wasn't a plea. It was a directive. He wanted her to expose it all. And now? She's about to. But what comes next will blow this case wide open. Because the truth isn't just in a journal. It's in the will. In the voicemail. In the safe hidden beneath the Brentwood estate. And when investigators cracked it open, they didn't find money. They didn't find jewelry. They found a recording. And that recording? Tracy hasn't released it yet. But she says when she does, "No one will ever see my father the same way again." What do you do when the truth is heavier than grief? Do you speak? Or do you disappear? Because after Tracy Reiner walked into CNN holding her father's journal and dropped a single sentence that rattled Hollywood, "We lied about how happy our family really was," she didn't stay to explain herself. She vanished. 7 days. No phone calls. No social media. No sightings. No statements from her lawyer. Nothing. And when someone goes quiet at the exact moment the world is begging them to talk, you have to ask the uncomfortable question. Was Tracy hiding, or was she being hidden? Day 1, the silence begins. The morning after Nick Reiner's arrest, reporters camped outside every Reiner-associated address. The Brentwood estate. Michelle's old studio. Rob's office downtown. Even Tracy's last known apartment in West Hollywood. Nothing. Her car was still parked in the garage. Her mail piled up. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Friends texted. No reply. Former colleagues called. No answer. And Romy told police she didn't know where her sister was. Which was strange. Because according to people close to the family, Tracy and Romy had spoken the night before the murders. At 10:41 p.m., a call lasting 12 minutes. What was said on that call? No one knows. But investigators flagged it immediately. The rumors start to spread. By day 2, the silence became a story. Is Tracy Reiner in shock? Has Tracy been hospitalized? Is Tracy afraid of Nick? Then came the darker whispers. She knows something. She helped cover it up. She's next. One anonymous LAPD source told a journalist, off the record. When someone disappears like that, it's usually for one of 2 reasons. They're either protecting someone or protecting themselves. Which one was Tracy doing? A family on the brink. Inside the Reiner family, things were unraveling fast. Romy stopped answering calls by day 3. Nick, from his holding cell, requested to speak to Tracy 3 times. She declined. That alone raised eyebrows. Why wouldn't a sister want to hear from her brother, accused of murdering their parents? Unless she was afraid of what he might say. Or worse, what he might accuse her of. The last place anyone expected to look. On day 4, a paparazzo spotted Tracy Reiner. Not in Los Angeles. Not in New York. But in Ojai. A small, quiet town north of LA. Known for meditation retreats. Privacy. Silence. She was seen entering a private wellness center that doesn't appear on Google Maps. No signage. No advertising. the kind of place celebrities go when they don't want to be found. Inside sources later confirmed Tracy checked in under an alias. Why? Because she wasn't just grieving. She was preparing. Inside the 7 days. According to a leaked intake form obtained weeks later, Tracy requested 3 things when she arrived. No phone access. No visitors. No media. But she did request something else. A lawyer. A therapist. And a journalist. That's not the request of someone breaking down. That's the request of someone getting ready to speak. What Tracy was reading. While the world speculated, Tracy was doing something very specific. She was reading the journal again, and again, and again, page by page, line by line, cross-referencing dates, matching entries with emails, matching emails with calendar appointments. She wasn't reminiscing. She was reconstructing a timeline. Because the more she read, the clearer it became. Her father didn't just sense danger. He documented it. A pattern emerges. In Rob Reiner's journal, certain names appeared repeatedly. Nick, Michelle, a single letter, H, and dates. Always dates. 3 weeks before the murders, Rob wrote. Nick's been calmer lately. Too calm. Like he knows something we don't. 10 days before. Michelle thinks someone's been in the house. I told her she's imagining it. But I checked the locks anyway. 3 days before. Tracy tried to warn me years ago. I should have listened. That sentence stopped Tracy cold. Warn him about what? She remembered the argument. She was 22, standing in Rob's study, telling him Nick scared her. Rob had laughed. Your brother's complicated, he said. He's not dangerous. She never brought it up again. Until now. The security footage nobody talked about. On day 5, Tracy made a call from the retreat. Not to family, not to friends, to a private investigator. She asked one question. Has anyone reviewed the exterior security footage from the week before the murders? The answer? No. The system had been overwritten. Automatically. Except one camera. The one facing the side yard near the guest house. And what it showed changed everything. 2:47 a.m., 3 nights before the murders. A figure. Tall. Male. Wearing a hoodie. He walks along the fence line. Stops. Looks toward the main house. Then, this is the part that made Tracy sit down. He uses a key. Not a crowbar. Not force. A key. And disappears inside. Who had a key? Family. Staff. And someone Rob trusted enough to never question. Why Tracy didn't speak right away. By day 6, CNN producers were losing patience. They'd prepared the segment. Teasers were written. Airtime reserved. But Tracy delayed. Again. She told them she needed one more confirmation. What confirmation? The will. Because buried beneath the grief and suspicion was another ticking bomb. Rob Reiner had changed his will. And Tracy had just discovered when. The will changed that changed everything. 2 weeks before the murders. Rob visited his attorney alone. No Michelle. No Nick. No Romy. He made changes. Significant ones. Tracy was removed entirely. Nick's share was reduced. Michelle's trust was altered. And a clause was added. If I die under suspicious circumstances, all assets are to be frozen pending further investigation. Why would someone planning for the future write that? Unless they feared they wouldn't live long enough to see it. The emotional breaking point. On the 7th night, Tracy broke down. Not in front of cameras. Not in front of lawyers. But alone. She cried for the father she loved. The father who failed her. The father who might have seen this coming and still couldn't stop it. And then she did something no one expected. She wrote a letter. Not to the police. Not to the press. To her younger self. I tried to tell you, she wrote. I tried to protect you. I just did it too late. That letter would never be released. But its existence matters. Because it shows something crucial. Tracy wasn't just coming forward to expose the truth. She was coming forward to take responsibility. The decision. Early the next morning, Tracy left the retreat. She didn't go home. She went straight to CNN. No entourage. No script. Just the journal. And a decision she knew would destroy her family's legacy forever. When the producer asked if she was sure, Tracy didn't hesitate. She said, they've protected him long enough. Him. Not Nick. Not Rob. Someone else. And that's when the real fear began. Because just hours before Tracy went on air, she received a message. From an unknown number. 6 words. Stop digging, or you're next. She showed it to the producer. Then deleted it. And walked into the studio anyway. Why? Because she knew something the rest of us didn't. The truth was already out there. It was just waiting for someone brave enough to say it out loud. And what she was about to reveal would change the case forever. Because Tracy wasn't just going to talk about her childhood, or the journal, or the lie of a perfect family. She was about to name a name. And once she did, the Reiner murders would no longer be about a troubled son. They would be about something much darker, something planned, something shared, something that didn't end with Rob and Michelle. What if the most important evidence wasn't found by police, but by the victim's daughter? Not in a drawer, not in a safe, but buried in the space between trust and betrayal. Because what Tracy Reiner brought to CNN that day wasn't just her grief. It wasn't even just her voice. It was her father's diary. Handwritten, raw, untouched by lawyers, police, or publicists. A secret journal Rob Reiner never meant for anyone to read, especially not the world. Especially not Tracy. But she read it. And now, so would everyone else. The journal that wasn't supposed to exist. Let's back up. Because when investigators first swept the Reiner estate, they cataloged everything. Clothes, medications, electronics, books, documents. But they missed something. A leather-bound book, tucked behind old screenplays in a locked cabinet inside Rob's private study. A study Tracy knew better than anyone, because she used to hide there as a child when things got bad. So when she returned to the house days after the murders, after the crime scene tape had been removed, after the detectives had moved on, she knew where to look. And there it was, still warm from the sun pouring through the study window. A black journal with no title, no markings, just Rob's unmistakable handwriting and his secrets. Why would Rob keep a diary? Here's the thing. Rob Reiner was a storyteller. He wrote scripts. He directed scenes. He controlled every narrative. So why keep a diary? According to Tracy, it wasn't always a diary. It began as notes, ideas, thoughts for future films, dialogues he never used, scenes too dark for public consumption. But somewhere along the way, those ideas blurred into confessions. He wasn't writing a movie anymore. He was writing a warning. And once Tracy started reading, she realized something chilling. Her father didn't just fear what might happen. He knew it was coming. The opening pages, regret in every line. The first entry was dated January 4th, 2023. New Year. Same ghosts. That's how it began. He wrote about sleepless nights. About Michelle withdrawing. About Tracy keeping her distance. About Nick's eyes looking empty again. One line stood out. I've spent my whole life directing fiction, but I can't direct my own family anymore. They've stopped listening. It wasn't angry. It wasn't poetic. It was scared. And Tracy would later say, that line was when I realized he was already mourning something. Maybe himself. The mentions of Nick, eerie and repetitive. As Tracy flipped through the pages, one name appeared more than any other. Nick. Some entries were filled with hope. He's doing better. Had dinner with us last night. Laughed at my old jokes. Almost like he was back. Others turned quickly. Caught him pacing the hallway again. Whispering to himself. Michelle's scared to ask. He asked about the will today. Told him everything was fine. He didn't believe me. He stood in the doorway last night. Said nothing. Just stared. I didn't sleep after that. And the most disturbing. If he snaps, it'll be my fault. I made him believe he was invincible. But he's not. None of us are. The pattern was clear. Rob was watching his son come undone. And he didn't know how to stop it. But then, the entries shift. Around mid-April 2023, something changes. Tracy reads. She said someone's been watching her from the trees. She won't go outside without the dog. I told her it's paranoia. But last night I saw it too. He doesn't name she, but it's clear he means Michelle. And what did she see? That part is unclear. But the paranoia builds. In entry after entry, Rob describes lights being left on, doors being unlocked, footsteps on the balcony. And then this. There's a smell. In the guest house. Like bleach. I asked Nick about it. He said I was imagining things. Was he? Or was someone cleaning something up? The entry that broke Tracy. It came 5 days before the murder. Short. Unfinished. Just a few sentences. Tracy called. We talked for an hour. She's changed. Stronger. Angrier. Said something I haven't stopped thinking about. Maybe it's not just Nick you should be worried about. That sentence shook Tracy to her core. Because she remembered that conversation. She did say those words. But she didn't mean them as a warning. She meant them as a joke. Or did she? Looking back, maybe she felt something brewing even then. The final entry. The last thing Rob ever wrote in his diary is now seared into the collective mind of the nation. One line. Dated the night before the murders. I heard something outside the study. Michelle's not answering. This ends tonight. I think I finally see the whole picture. No signature. No period. Just an unfinished thought. The page that was missing. But here's the twist. Between that final entry and the one before it, there was a page torn out. Clean. No remnants. No fragments. Ripped from the spine with precision. Why? Was it Rob? Did he destroy something he couldn't bear to leave behind? Or was it someone else, someone who didn't want that page to be found? According to Tracy, it was a key day, May 10th. That date appears in the security logs. It's the same night Romy claimed she saw someone lurking near the back fence. And Rob's phone location? Pinged 20 miles away. Why would he leave the house that night? And then come back and tear out a page from his journal? Where did he go? And what did he see? The margins. Michelle's handwriting appears. In multiple places throughout the journal, someone else had scribbled notes in the margins. Different ink. Different pressure. It was Michelle. She had clearly read some of the entries. Next to a line where Rob wrote, I worry Tracy blames me for everything. I try to be a good father. Michelle added, you weren't. But you tried. Another note. Next to a passage about Nick's erratic behavior. You're finally admitting it. I begged you to see it 2 years ago. And on one page, entirely on its own, just 3 words in all caps. You promised me. Tracy saw that and began to cry because she didn't know if that promise was about love or survival. What investigators think about the journal? To date, the LAPD has not officially confirmed the journal's existence. But unofficially, multiple sources say they're treating it as evidence. Why? Because Rob dated everything. He included specific times, names, references to legal meetings, and most notably, a list of passwords, email logins, security system backups, including one labeled safecam_a_ring_backup, a cloud file stored under a private account the police hadn't accessed yet. Tracy handed it over. And what was on it? Let's just say the footage hasn't been released. But one detective reportedly told a journalist. It made everything worse. The page Tracy added herself. At the end of the journal, after Rob's final entry, after the missing page, after Michelle's scattered notes, Tracy added something. Not a confession, not an accusation, a letter. To her mother. You tried to love him through all of it. The silence, the storms, the denial. You tried to make it work. And in the end, it killed you. I'm sorry I didn't come back sooner. I'm sorry I wasn't stronger. I'm going to finish what you started. She signed it. Tracy. But what she found next changed everything. Because hidden in the back cover of the journal, beneath the spine, behind the lining, was a thin, folded piece of paper. It wasn't written by Rob. It was written by Michelle, dated one day before her death, and it simply read, If anything happens to me, check the yellow box in the attic. And don't trust him. Who was him? She didn't say. But that attic had already been cleared by investigators. And the yellow box was gone. What if the picture-perfect family you idolized was built on a lie? Not just a small omission, not just a hidden affair or a strained sibling rivalry, but a system of silence, a house of smiling masks, a family so desperate to appear whole that they never admitted they were breaking. This is the Reiner family as Tracy finally described them. Not the red carpet ready, charity gala attending, award-winning legacy family we saw on TV, but a fractured, fragile collection of actors. Off-camera and off-script. And according to Tracy Reiner, the illusion was by design. The perfect frame, Hollywood's favorite family. Let's talk about the image first. Because for 4 decades, the Reiners worked their image like a second job. Rob Reiner, the son of Carl Reiner, grew up in the business. A director, a writer, a symbol of intelligent Hollywood. He was the guy you called when you wanted to make a film with heart. He married Michelle Singer, a celebrated photographer and artistic powerhouse. Their chemistry looked effortless in interviews. People magazine once called them the last great love story in showbiz. And their children? Tracy, the quiet but thoughtful daughter, often called the old soul of the family. Nick, the comeback kid with a heart of gold. Romy, the mysterious youngest, always one step out of the spotlight. They were goals. Every award season. Every family-centered interview. Every Father's Day Instagram post. But if you asked Tracy, it was all for show. We weren't happy. We were rehearsed. The adoption that created a rift. Tracy Reiner was adopted by Rob after he married Penny Marshall, her biological mother. From the outside, it looked beautiful. Rob stepping into a father role with grace, loving Tracy as his own. But privately, Tracy says the dynamic was cold. He loved the idea of fatherhood more than the reality. He liked control, not questions. She says she was never allowed to express anger, never allowed to disagree, never allowed to be flawed, because flawed didn't fit the narrative. And if you've ever grown up in a family obsessed with appearances, you know what that does to a child. It breaks them from the inside out. The golden child versus the shadow child. Then came Nick, Rob and Michelle's only biological son, and everything shifted. Tracy remembers it clearly. She was 14. Nick was born, and suddenly, she was invisible. My job became not to disrupt the family. That's what Michelle told me once. Don't make things harder for your father. Nick was brilliant, intense, but unstable. Even as a kid, he showed signs of volatility. Outbursts, obsessive behavior, manipulation. And Rob? He excused all of it. He's sensitive, Rob would say. He's gifted. He just feels things more. But when Tracy cried, when Tracy screamed, she was told to go to her room. He gave Nick room to fall apart. But I was expected to be perfect. Behind the walls of the Reiner estate, the Brentwood mansion became a museum of curated happiness. Every room designed with taste. Photos perfectly arranged. Family portraits in soft light. But behind those walls, Tracy paints a very different picture. It was quiet. Too quiet. Not peaceful, tense. You could feel the pressure in your chest. Like everyone was walking on eggshells. She says the silence was strategic. They didn't yell. They didn't slam doors. They simply froze each other out. You could be sitting at the table, eating soup, and know that someone was furious with you. But they'd never say it. They'd just let it sit. Until it cracked you. And if you did speak up, you were the problem. Therapy, control, and the unspoken contract. In her early 20s, Tracy sought therapy. She told her therapist she felt like a background character in her own home. Invisible, disposable, replaceable. The therapist asked if she ever confronted Rob. Tracy laughed. That wasn't allowed. You don't confront Rob Reiner. You perform. She describes the family dynamic as contractual. Everyone had a role. Everyone knew their lines. Michelle played the protector. Nick played the prodigy. Romy played the innocent. And Tracy? She played the reliable one. The one who never made trouble. The one who knew when to disappear. A lifetime of silence. Over the years, Tracy says she tried, really tried, to be part of the family. Holidays, birthdays, premieres. She'd show up, smile, pose, and inside, she'd be screaming. Every time I went home, I left with a headache. Not because we fought, but because we didn't. She tried writing letters to Rob, tried honest conversations with Michelle, tried therapy with Nick. None of it worked. They wanted peace, not healing. There's a difference. Peace is surface level. Healing is messy, uncomfortable, loud. The Reiners weren't interested in messy. The turning point, a Thanksgiving breakdown. Thanksgiving 2017. Tracy arrived at the estate alone. Her partner had just left her. She was struggling with depression. She hoped for a connection. Instead, she got silence. Nick mocked her outfit. Rob asked if she was off her meds again. Michelle poured her wine and walked away mid-sentence. That night, Tracy had a panic attack in the guest bathroom. She stayed in there for 3 hours. No one came to check. That's when I knew. I wasn't family. I was furniture. The next morning, she packed her bag before sunrise and left without saying goodbye. She didn't return for 2 years. The red carpet lie. In 2019, the Reiners attended a charity gala. Photos show them arm in arm. Tracy beaming. Rob mid-laugh. But Tracy reveals something shocking. He hadn't spoken to me in months. That laugh. It wasn't for me. It was for the cameras. She says the whole night felt like a funeral. We were burying the truth again. And that night, when a reporter asked about this strong family bond, Tracy almost choked. She wanted to scream. Instead, she smiled and said, "We're very lucky." And in that moment, she realized. The lie wasn't just theirs anymore. It was hers too. The secrets no one dared mention. Here's where it gets even darker. Because according to Tracy, there were things nobody talked about. Nick's outbursts that escalated to violence. Michelle's breakdown in 2015, rumored but never confirmed. Rob's suspected affairs during filming. And something else. A family incident in 2004. Tracy won't say what it was. Only that it changed everything. That was the moment the line was drawn. You're either with the family or outside of it. She chose outside. But she kept returning because a part of her still believed they could heal. Until the murders. Why speak now? Why break the illusion? After Rob and Michelle's deaths, Tracy says the truth became urgent. Because silence had cost too much, and pretending had done too much damage. I lied for years. I lied in interviews. I lied at holidays. I lied to myself. But no more. The journal broke the illusion. The voicemail shattered it. And Tracy? She wasn't going to keep the Reiner legacy alive at the expense of her own soul. They can paint him as a genius. That's fine. But let's not pretend we were happy. We weren't. We were a script he couldn't finish. But what she found in the will would rip the illusion to shreds. Because Tracy hadn't just been erased emotionally. She'd been erased financially. No mention. No inheritance. No trust. No letter. Nothing. And according to her lawyer, that omission wasn't accidental. It was recent. Very recent. And the person who advised Rob to make that change was still alive. And still very much in the picture. What if the people who gave you a name never really gave you a place? That's the question Tracy Reiner has carried her entire life. Not out loud. Not on talk shows. Not in memoirs. But in silence. In therapy. In the way she hesitated every time someone asked her, "So what was it like growing up as Rob Reiner's daughter?" Because the answer wasn't what people wanted to hear. They wanted warmth. They wanted inspiration. They wanted a Hollywood fairy tale of rescue and redemption. But Tracy's story was messier. It wasn't about being saved. It was about being seen. And according to her, she never truly was. The beginning, a new name, an old wound. Tracy was born to Penny Marshall before Rob entered the picture. When Penny and Rob married, he adopted Tracy legally, giving her his name, his status, and supposedly his heart. But as Tracy explained in her CNN interview, being adopted by a famous man doesn't mean you belong. It just means you're legally his responsibility. Emotionally, that's another story. To the outside world, it was a beautiful gesture. The young comedy director embracing a little girl not biologically his. But inside the home, Tracy says the reality was colder. He never hit me. He never screamed. He just looked through me. The kind of absence that cuts deeper than anger. A ghost in her own family. Tracy began noticing the difference early. Rob's attention wasn't distributed equally. It was hoarded, reserved. For Nick. Nick was born with fireworks. Even when he cried, it was special. When I cried, I was told to keep it down. As Nick grew up, even Romy, years younger than Tracy, was given more space to stumble, to make mistakes, to be held. But Tracy? Tracy had to earn her space. I had to be perfect to be noticed. And even then, I wasn't interesting enough. And that's the cruel irony of being adopted into a legacy family. You're always auditioning. Always trying to prove you're not an outsider. That you deserve the last name you were given. The DNA test no one knows about. In 2021, Tracy took a private DNA test. Not out of curiosity. Out of something deeper. Desperation. She needed to answer a question she was too afraid to ask her parents. Was I ever wanted? She had always wondered whether her adoption had been transactional. A way to complete a PR-friendly family image. A political move for a director trying to market himself as progressive and warm. The test revealed something she expected, but still broke her. Her biological father had reached out to her through an anonymous intermediary 10 years earlier. She never got the message. It had been intercepted by someone close to her. Tracy wouldn't say who, but her voice cracked when she confirmed it was someone in the immediate family. Emotional control disguised as love. Therapy records, later subpoenaed during the estate proceedings, show a pattern in Tracy's recollections. She speaks often of being managed, not raised. I was taught to smile before I was taught to speak. She recalled one session where her therapist asked her to describe affection in her childhood home. She went silent, and then said, affection wasn't spontaneous. It was scheduled. Rob, she said, would hug for the cameras, compliment her in public, Talk about how proud he was at events. But at home, silence, disapproval, distance. And when she tried to bring it up, she was accused of being dramatic. It's hard to grow roots when every time you reach out, you're pruned. Public praise, private distance. In one particularly viral video clip from 2003, Rob Reiner is seen accepting an award and thanking his family. He says, "And of course, my incredible kids. Romy, Nick, and Tracy, you're my reason." Tracy, watching backstage, had tears in her eyes. But not because she was touched, because she knew what would happen after the ceremony. And it did. Rob brushed past her, didn't speak, didn't acknowledge the tearful hug she tried to give him. He gave me the speech, not the substance. And in that moment, she says, she learned something painful. Being included is not the same as being loved. The incident at age 16 that changed everything. At 16, Tracy says she tried to leave. Not just the house, the family. She applied to study abroad. Secretly. When Rob found out, he didn't yell. He laughed. "You can leave, but just remember, nobody out there cares about you the way I do. And if you walk away, you stay away." It was the only time she remembered him giving her an ultimatum. So she stayed. Physically, but emotionally, she left that day and never fully came back. Tracy's mother, a conflicted ally. Penny Marshall, Tracy's biological mother and Rob's ex-wife, was, according to Tracy, the only one who saw the full picture. But even she stayed silent. She tried to help, but she was scared of the machine, of what it would mean to turn against it. Tracy says Penny once told her, "This town runs on fiction. You start telling the truth, and it'll run you out." So Tracy learned to zip her emotions, smile politely, play the role, until the murders, when everything she feared came true. Tracy always feared she'd be cut out of the will, out of the narrative, out of the family. But when the updated documents surfaced, her name wasn't there. Not once. Not in a footnote. Not in a trust. Not even in the letters left behind. It wasn't just painful. It was surgical. They erased me like I was a mistake. The Reiner name she carried her entire life had been used against her. And now, she was standing in front of the world saying, "They wanted me invisible. I'm done playing along." How identity was weaponized against her. One of the most damning discoveries in Tracy's confession? A letter from a former Reiner family lawyer, dated 2 years before the murders. In it, the lawyer refers to Tracy as a non-blood dependent with no entitlement, a phrase that Tracy says haunted her. "That's how they saw me. Not as a daughter, as a liability." Even though she carried the name, even though she stood beside them at every public event, behind closed doors, she was nothing more than a formality, a lifetime of proof, and still no belonging. Tracy showed up at Nick's rehab visits, at Romy's school plays, at her father's premieres. She cooked Thanksgiving dinners alone. She organized family photo shoots. She even paid Romy's rent once when no one else would. "I kept thinking if I gave enough, they'd see me. Turns out, I was handing them the tools to bury me." Even the journal, Rob's final confessional, barely mentioned her. And when it did, it was regret. But regret without redemption. He wrote that he failed me, but he never tried to fix it. The breaking point, the recording in the safe. When investigators cracked open Michelle's hidden safe and found the recording labeled, "If I Die," Tracy was asked if she wanted to hear it. She hesitated, then said yes. The recording, still unreleased publicly, includes a message from Michelle. In it, she references something chilling. He made her feel like she didn't exist, and now he's pretending she never did. Tracy broke down, because for the first time in her life, she heard her stepmother acknowledge her pain. Even in death, Michelle had tried to protect her. But what Michelle left behind wasn't just words. In that same safe was a separate envelope, addressed to Tracy. Inside, a photograph. Young Tracy, maybe 6, sitting on Michelle's lap, smiling. Safe. On the back, written in Michelle's hand, "You mattered, even when he acted like you didn't. Don't forget that." It was the first and only personal note Tracy had ever received from Michelle, and it became her fuel. Because now, she wasn't just speaking for herself. She was speaking for every child who ever felt invisible in their own home. But when she traced the final change to the will, she found a name no one expected. And that name wasn't Rob, wasn't Nick, wasn't Romy. It was someone who had been circling the Reiner family for years. A name quietly listed on estate documents. A name that appears again and again in Rob's journal. The same name Michelle whispered in her final voicemail. But who was it? And what did they want? How do you erase a person without ever raising your voice? Not by pushing them away, not by cutting them off in a rage, but by simply writing them out. Silently, legally, permanently. That's what Rob Reiner did to Tracy. And the most brutal part? He did it with a signature. A single stroke of ink that said more than any conversation ever could. He didn't scream, "You don't belong." He didn't disown her in public. He just edited her out. And no one in the family breathed a word about it until she saw it for herself. Buried in the revised documents that would ultimately unravel everything the Reiner name stood for. The will, a document of disappearance. It was Michelle's attorney who confirmed it. 2 weeks after Rob and Michelle's murders, probate court initiated the early review of Rob Reiner's most recent will. Not the one everyone thought existed. Not the older version that left a fair inheritance to all 3 children. Not the one Tracy had seen years ago, where she had a share of the estate, a handwritten letter from Rob, and a personal note of thanks for never giving up on us. No, this was new. Signed, notarized, dated March 11th, 2025, only 3 months before the murders. The clauses that raised eyebrows. The new version of the will was sharp, cold, businesslike. Michelle was still the co-beneficiary, on paper. Nick and Romy split the estate. 50/50ths. Real estate, film rights, royalties, investments. Everything. And Tracy? Not even a line. Not even a "to my daughter" clause with a symbolic item. Something celebrities often leave in place to acknowledge a person while still denying them assets. Nothing. She didn't exist in the document. No trust. No property. No note. No closure. It was as if she had never been part of the family at all. But who suggested the change? This is where it gets murky. Wills don't update themselves. Especially not for a man like Rob Reiner, whose legal affairs were historically airtight. So the question became, who advised him to make the changes? The answer? A name buried in the metadata of the digital version of the document. Howard S. Feldman, a longtime associate of the Reiners. Not Rob's primary lawyer, not even his second, but someone who had power of attorney during a specific window of time, February through March 2025, while Rob was reportedly dealing with a private health issue. A window during which he wasn't even supposed to be updating legal documents. Yet, somehow, this version got signed, got notarized, got filed. Tracy had never met Howard, but she would soon learn. Michelle had, and Michelle hated him. The yellow folder in the attic. Remember the note Michelle left behind? If anything happens to me, check the yellow box in the attic. And don't trust him. After a second, unofficial sweep of the Brentwood estate, private investigators hired by Tracy discovered a loose panel in the attic wall. Behind it, a thin, cracked yellow file folder, faded from years of heat. Inside, printed emails, correspondence between Rob and Howard Feldman, discussions about estate revisions, concerns about Tracy's mental state. Her political statements could jeopardize the family brand. But here's the kicker. One email, dated the day before the will was signed, shows Feldman writing, "I strongly recommend we remove Tracy from all legal documents. Cleaner, easier, less exposure. Trust me on this." Rob replied, "Do it. But Michelle can't know yet. I'll handle that later." But Michelle did find out. One of Michelle's handwritten notes, discovered in the same folder, was addressed to herself. A single-page stream of consciousness. She wrote, "How could he do this? She gave him everything, stood by him even when it hurt her, and now he's cutting her out. Is it me next? Maybe we've protected the wrong person for too long." She underlined those final words twice. Then, in the margin, she scribbled, "Howard is the key. Why was Tracy removed?" If you ask Tracy, the reasons weren't personal. They were political. Rob was preparing to release a memoir. His final film, rumored to be autobiographical, was nearly complete. And Tracy? She had been distancing herself from the brand for years, speaking out about addiction, calling out Hollywood's hypocrisy, supporting causes Rob didn't agree with. "I wasn't on message anymore," she said in the CNN interview. And when you're not on message in a family like ours, you're a liability. But was that really it? Or was there something darker? Something Rob couldn't risk Tracy exposing if she inherited the rights to his life's work? Because according to a source close to Michelle, Tracy knew the real story behind Nick's second rehab. And if that ever got out, it would destroy everything. Romy's reaction, the slip that changed the case. Romy, the youngest Reiner, hadn't spoken much publicly until a private message she sent to a friend was leaked to the press. She wrote, "I don't think Tracy's lying. I remember that night. I saw the papers on Dad's desk. She was erased. I thought it was a mistake. But it wasn't." That leak changed everything, because it confirmed the family knew that Rob had discussed the new will, at least with Romy. And that no one told Tracy, not even after Rob and Michelle's deaths. The clause no one noticed until it was too late. Buried near the end of the new will, in small print, was a chilling clause. "In the event of my death under unusual or suspicious circumstances, I request a delay of distribution of all assets until law enforcement confirms there is no foul play. If foul play is suspected, I appoint Howard Feldman as temporary estate executor." Pause. Rob suspected his death could be suspicious, and still appointed the man who recommended erasing Tracy? Let that settle. Then add this. Howard Feldman attempted to execute that clause the day after Rob's death, trying to assume control over the entire estate, bypassing Michelle's previously assigned attorney. But Michelle had acted first. 1 week earlier, she had filed her own updated estate documents, separate from Rob's, naming Tracy as her full beneficiary. That paperwork hadn't been processed yet, but it existed, and when it surfaced, everything unraveled. The fight over the estate turns public. Tracy's legal team filed an emergency injunction. Nick's attorneys fired back. Romy withdrew from the proceedings altogether. The press called it the Reiner War. But inside court documents was something far more disturbing. A voice memo, recorded by Michelle, timestamped 1 day before the murders. In it, she says, "Rob's not thinking straight. He's listening to Howard too much. I found another letter. He wants to make Nick the only heir. If anything happens, Tracy needs to know it wasn't her fault. None of this is her fault." The final blow, Rob's unsent letter. In the same folder with the will, a sealed envelope addressed to Tracy was found. It was never mailed, never handed over, but it existed. In it, Rob writes, "You've always been stronger than I gave you credit for. I didn't leave you out because I hated you. I left you out because I knew you wouldn't need the money. You have something the others don't. You have your own story." He signs it. "Forgive me if you can. Dad." Tracy wept when she read it. Not because it made things better, but because it proved something she had always feared. He knew what he was doing, and he did it anyway. But what she found buried in Feldman's emails would expose a new suspect, because the digital trail didn't end with estate plans. In one message, sent to a third party, Feldman referenced a visit from N last week. "He's unstable. I warned R." Who was R? Rob? Romy? And what was Feldman warning them about? Tracy's team began digging, and what they uncovered next wasn't about money, or fame, or even revenge. It was about survival. Because the will wasn't just rewritten to exclude Tracy. It was rewritten to protect someone. Someone still alive. Someone who had everything to lose, if the truth ever got out. What happens when the boy the world was told to root for becomes the man everyone's afraid of? That's the question at the center of this tragedy. And it's not just about guilt. It's about perception, reputation, family blindness. Because Nick Reiner wasn't just Rob's son. He was the center of the Reiner family machine. A prince who never had to bleed. A broken boy with a silver spoon in one hand and a sealed record in the other. He was protected, defended, coddled. Until the morning of June 8th, when police found his parents dead in their Brentwood home. And Nick was asleep in the guest house. Calm, unbothered, allegedly. But was he the killer? Or just the convenient villain? Let's peel back the mask, because what you're about to learn changes everything. The early years, a golden child with cracks in the glass. Nick Reiner was born into a world most kids can't even dream of. Private schools, celebrity godparents, luxury vacations, red carpet playdates. But behind the scenes, there were early warning signs. From age 5, teachers documented violent mood swings. He was expelled twice by the time he turned 11. And by 13, he was using. We're not talking about sneaking a sip of wine at a dinner party. We're talking prescription pills. stolen from the housekeeper's purse, hidden in his backpack. And every time someone raised a concern, Rob stepped in, paid off the school, reframed the story, controlled the narrative. He's creative, emotional, misunderstood. No, he was spiraling.